Opposite Gloves here, and this is the 6th video in the FL12 effects series. And today we're going to talk about the Fruity WaveShaper and specifically about distortion, a few different types of distortion, and saturation, and sort of what it means. So the WaveShaper, what it does is essentially you have your volume coming in one way and you have your output coming out the other way. And most places they say that, but then they don't really explain what it means. And understanding that sentence right there is like the essence of the Fruity WaveShaper. So let's say I've got a sine wave, which I do, and that's our wave tone, right? And we're going to use our sine wave to sort of judge what the WaveShaper does. So output, or this is input, so the x-axis is input, so how loud our sound is. So this is the question. If I go like this, it affects my sound, right? And I get that reaction. It specifically creates this shape. But if I go like this, I don't get any reaction. And it would make sense because we could see by our line here how loud our signal is. Well, why is that? Now, I did like a whole bunch of research trying to kind of discover for myself so that I could understand and grasp what I was doing. But what I discovered was this is a spline graph, and if you don't know what that is, go ahead and go look it up. It's pretty cool. It has to do with math and the way it interpolates data between points. So it wasn't really the answer to my question, but I discovered it later on. So this is our volume, right? And if we have a really soft sine wave, let's turn the volume down. It's only that loud, right? So we would only come up to here on our graph. Well, if we were to reduce the volume there, so right now everything's at a 1-to-1 ratio. So if we bring things down, it will reduce the volume. And if we bring things up, it will not technically reduce the volume, but it will push our values to the maximum and minimum proportionally. And you could do this because it's a spline graph. This explains why it behaves in a particular way, why you can create curves as opposed to just straight lines. But right now our volume's only this loud, right? So if we were to push that down, we'd flatten it out. And if we were to push it up, we would increase the output until we reached the 1-to-1, not 1-to-1, until we reached a line. It would just keep getting louder. So now that you understand that, now we're in a place to understand why it's behaving that way. So if we turn our volume back up, so that's our tone, and if we bring this down, you see it's pushing in. Where's the freeze? There's a freeze control. You see it's pushing in our ground right here where it's crossing the middle zone, but it happens down here. If you were to do it up here, it would behave differently. Well, that's because in that area of output, that's your output's soft, so it's crushing that output. It's not crushing the other output, the stuff that goes beyond that volume area. And so each part of this graph represents different parts of your output. And that is why when you have it shorter, it will behave that way. So this is called, I believe it's called zero crossing distortion. And it's important for specific kinds of things, like guitars are big on zero crossing distortion and stuff. But that's why it's behaving the way it is. And when I understood that, that was like a revelation. Like if you didn't understand that, like go back and watch it again, because it's just like a really important concept. Because from now, once you understand that, you understand how the graph manipulates shapes and why velocity is important to the shapes. So now you should understand the sentence, this is output and this is input, and this distorts it, pushing them to their maximum or minimum values according to the curve you set. And the reason why it doesn't immediately go to a straight line, like straight minimum and maximum, is because from my understanding, this is a spline graph, and spline graphs interpolate data differently. So that's my explanation for stuff. I hope I got it right. But okay, now let's do some more experiments real quick. So if we were to turn our volume up, so we're getting way over here now, and we'll turn our pre up. You'll notice that as we push our stuff, let's just do single line movements now. If we push our graph up, it'll just increase the volume until it reaches its minimum and maximum. And it will do it according to the volume that you set. So the lower values are being pushed less hard than the higher values. So the different areas of volume. So your wave would be much bigger over here. So, and these values are being pushed all the way, which is why you get a top end like that. Now, let's cover some basic distortion types real quick. So there's something called, there's the zero crossing distortion, which affects how it crosses where the zero line. And then there's, I don't know the official name for this, but basically the way you form your peak shapes. This is where saturation comes from. Different types of plugins, maybe they're referring to analog warmth. Now, the thing about analog warmth is sometimes it's about being randomization and stuff, but it has to do with the way you distort things as well. And so if you move the mix around and stuff, if you're one of those people who likes random stuff to create your analog warmth, because in analog systems, they use transistors and all sorts of different things to create their sounds. I've actually kind of wanted to build an analog synth. I've gotten into building oscillators, but anyways, that's besides the point. So they use different things to build distortion. But the problem is some parts heat up or cool down, and that affects the way your voltage flows through those parts. And that's why it's a bit random. But on other times, they're just referring to a specific kind of distortion, and there's kind of like a perfect mix between them. But this is when you round out the top in a particular way, like so. I mean, it's not super, let's make it super obvious. This is called saturation now. This is what people would refer to as saturation. And you can go really nice. Analog is generally not too tough on this, but digital can do this. We can just straight flatten this sucker. That's digital distortion. And then everything in between. So hopefully the results now are starting to make some sense to you. And so that's where saturation comes from. That's what that deal is about. And so whenever you see a plugin that says it's introducing, like it's saturating or whatever, it's either just distorting it and it's calling it saturation, or it is introducing some randomness, and maybe there's a much more complicated process going on below the scenes. But now and those are the basic kinds, just the kinds that affect the top and the down. Of course, there's all sorts of different in-betweens. But let's cover the controls now. Just so you know, there are presets to this guy, and you can actually see different options we have here. Some of them are actually references to other plugins, and some of them are references to specific kinds of distortion you can have. Now, this is a graph, and as a result, you can do this to the lower end of your volume, but you can bring down the middle range of it, and you can push the upper end, and you get some really funky shapes, right? And so that might be something you really want. And once you have, like, let's say this is the particular line that you want, and you don't want to accidentally touch it or move it around, you can hit freeze, and it's frozen. So now it will stay that way. You can't accidentally change it. So that's why that's there. You have the step option. It allows you to, if you hold down your mouse, it allows you to just draw curves like crazy. And if you right click, it will get rid of curves and reduce you back to 0. That's what step does. And then you have snap, which will allow you to snap to the grid. So if we had step on but no snap, it would look like this. So a lot like more fluid, I guess. Anyways, I prefer to have snap on. You have this. This is symmetrical and asymmetrical. So right now, any change we make will affect both sides of our waveform. But if we do this, it adds a point in the middle, and we can, and what it basically did just now, this is now the top part of our waveform, and this is now the negative part of our waveform, positive and negative. So we can affect, as you can can see we're affecting just the bottom. And this could become really handy too when you're simulating particular kinds of sounds, or maybe you're just looking for some interesting types of distortion. You can create some offset and do things like that. And so that's what that does. And this could be really cool. That might be something you want to do. Now you have all these menus right here where you can open up basically your own presets. You can save your own. You have all these options in here to do things. And so these are, I mean, most of them are pretty self-explanatory. You can copy a state and go over to another WaveShaper and put it in. Think of it just as like a save file, essentially. We can do things like this too, where we can flip it vertically if you so desire. Scale levels and normalize levels. A lot of these things, I haven't really touched them before, so I'm not really sure about what they do, but apparently there's a sequencer in here, and that's actually pretty cool. A bunch of different options. So I've never really touched these, but I'm sure it could do some pretty cool stuff. Apparently you can drop an analog file. Wow, that's really loud. Let's turn that like way down. And it will analyze your audio file. I don't even know. I've never even touched this stuff. This is like black voodoo magic over here. Turn all points smooth. I think we need less points to see what that one does, because I think it just has something to do with the interpolation of 2 points. Okay, let's make them smooth. Oh, there you go. It just has a bevel curve on it. Filter. Huh. Yeah, I don't know what this does at all. Oh, you can offset it. See, this kind of stuff, I don't know. I just would not use this because I'm making my curve on my own. So I'm not sure why I'd want to use that, but maybe I'm going for a specific type of distortion. That's the easiest way of going about it. I don't know. But yeah, you have these options over here. Then you have a decimate points option down here. I don't know what that does. If you guys figure out what some of this stuff does, I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory. Then you can drop it in the comments, I suppose. I don't generally go to this plugin for this. I go to it for distortion. Then you have oversampling down here. I covered that in the DSP basics. So this is a plugin that could give you that sort of an option. Then you have the center option. It removes DC offset. If you don't know what that means, don't worry about it. I'll cover it later on. It'll probably be in the DSP video at some point, just to when signals have that. So then you have these 3 knobs. These are probably the most important knobs besides the graph here. And this is the pre knob. So you can see your line here that represents the output that you're putting in, and it will boost the signal for you. So that, let's say you have a really soft signal and you need to boost it. Pre is the way to do that jazz. Mix is the amount that this curve actually affects your sound, which is not doing anything right now because we don't have anything going on. But if we were to add one, you can hear that that is the mix, and you could get in-betweens of your distortion types. Let's do something like this. You could also automate this guy to create some interesting effects. And then you have post, what comes out at the very end. So if you don't have anything on post, nothing's going to come out. And that is the Fruity WaveShaper in a nutshell. If you have any questions about this, let me know. Oh, I did not know this either, but apparently this will get rid of this bottom portion, so that all you have is the graph. That's pretty cool too. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments. Subscribe if you found this useful, and share it with someone that you think would benefit from it. And have a blessed day.